At 6:32 in the morning, the quiet along a narrow forest road in France was shattered by the low rumble of engines. A single Sherman tank, battered and scarred from previous battles, crept forward over the mud, its steel tracks grinding against the frozen earth. Most officers had already written it off, marking it as too damaged to return to combat. Yet here it was, moving like a shadow through the mist, carrying a crew that believed this old machine could still make a difference. The Germans, confident in their convoy of armored vehicles and supply trucks, had no idea what awaited them. Their drivers chatted casually, unaware that the approaching rumble belonged to a tank that had been counted out, dismissed as broken and useless. The thought of an abandoned vehicle turning into a threat would have seemed absurd, even impossible. But this day, in this quiet stretch of forest, the impossible was about to unfold. Inside the Sherman, controls, every bolt, every dent on the hull, told the story of battles past. Yet despite the scars, there was life in this tank. Its gun, though worn, could still fire, and its engine, though loud and coughing, and could still roar when commanded. Wallace knew the Germans wouldn't expect resistance from a tank they assumed was out of action. That advantage, however small, could turn the tables. The mist hung thick, blurring the lines between trees and sky. For a moment, the world felt suspended in silence, as if it was holding its breath. Then became the first flicker of movement, a German scout car rounding the bend, ahead, unaware that a ghost of a tank was closing in. In that instant, the fate of the convoy and the tank would collide, and what had been dismissed as scrap would soon leave its mark on the battlefield. This was more than a story of steel and fire. It was about courage, ingenuity, and the unexpected ways war could twist reality. One tank, thought lost, was about to change everything for both sides. The morning fog hid more than just the road ahead. It concealed a plan that no one expected. This battered Sherman tank, abandoned on paper and written off by its own commanders, was now on a mission that could turn the tide of a small but crucial engagement. The Germans moved confidently, their convoy stretching for hundreds of meters, carrying fuel, ammunition, and supplies destined for them front lines. They believed the path was clear, the forest quiet, and nothing could disturb their orderly advance. Inside the tank, Corporal Wallace and his crew scanned the mist, their eyes sharp, their minds focused. They knew the risks one wrong move and the tank could be destroyed before it even fired a shot. But they also knew the reward: stopping this convoy could delay reinforcements, destroy resources, and send a powerful message that even the most broken weapons could still fight. The tension was palpable. The crew's hearts raced in unison with the engine's growl, and every shadow in the fog seemed like a threat. Yet, beneath that tension was a quiet determination. They had been through worse, seen tank disabled and comrades lost, and yet here they were, ready to prove that courage and quick thinking mattered as much as numbers or firepower. By the end of this encounter, the Germans would remember the day a tank they assumed was useless rose from the shadows and struck with precision. For viewers watching, this story would reveal how strategy, timing, and the unexpected could turn the tables in war. What seemed like a lost cause was about to become a legend in its own right, and every moment from here on would count toward that dramatic unfolding. In the summer of 1944, the war in Europe was reaching a critical stage. The Allies had landed in Normandy, and every supply line, every convoy, was a lifeline for troops pushing deeper into occupied France. The Germans were stretched thin, trying to protect their territory while facing relentless attacks from the air and on the ground. Roads that seemed safe were now dangerous corridors, where ambushes could appear without warning, and even a single delayed shipment could have had serious consequences for the front lines. The Sherman tank that Wallace commanded had already seen countless battles. It had survived artillery barrages, close-range attacks, and the chaos of retreat. Many officers had deemed it beyond repair, a machine whose best days were behind it. Yet the reality of war meant resources were limited, and every functioning tank, no matter how damaged, was a weapon that could be deployed strategically. For soldiers like Wallace, understanding the landscape, the enemy, and the value of even a worn tank could make the difference between victory and defeat. The forest roads where the German convoy moved were narrow and twisting, with dense trees on either side. These paths offered opportunities for ambush, but also dangers for anyone trying to navigate them. Mines, hidden obstacles, and the constant threat of enemy patrols turned what might have seemed like a simple route into a tense gauntlet. Wallace and his crew knew that exploiting these conditions required not just courage, but careful planning, timing, and nerves of steel. Every day in the European theater reminded soldiers that war was unpredictable. A single mechanical failure, a misstep, or an overlooked path could turn an ordinary mission into a deadly trap. Conversely, the unexpected actions of a determined crew or a damaged tank could create moments of brilliance that changed outcomes in ways no one anticipated. The stage was set for such a moment, where preparation, skill, and the element of surprise would collide in the shadow of the trees. The Sherman tank, though battered and dented, was more than just metal. It was home to a small, tightly knit crew who relied on each other for survival. Corporal Henry Wallace, the tank's commander, was a man known for calm decision-making under fire. His eyes missed nothing, and his experience gave him an almost instinctive understanding of how to use the tank to its fullest, even in situations where it seemed helpless. Alongside him was Private First Class Sam Reynolds, the gunner. Reynolds had a steady hand and an unshakable focus, able to line up shots under pressure where others might falter. He understood the mechanics of the old Sherman better than most, often improvising solutions to keep it operational despite its wear and damage. In the loader's position was young Private Joe Barnes. Though less experienced than the others, his energy and quick reactions made him invaluable. He could load shells faster than anyone on the crew, and his determination to prove himself gave the team a boost of morale during tense moments. Rounding out the crew was driver Corporal Frank Harris, whose skill behind the controls was essential. Harris knew how to maneuver the tank over rough terrain, mud, and obstacles that might trap a less experienced driver, keeping the machine alive and moving when every second counted. Together, this four-man team had formed a bond forged by previous skirmishes and the harsh reality of combat. They trusted each other implicitly, understanding that the life of the tank and the success of any mission depended on cooperation, communication, and split-second decisions. The Sherman, though considered broken by others, became a weapon in their hands because of the combination of skill, courage, and experience each crew member brought to the table. It wasn't just a story of a machine going into battle, it was the story of people who refused to give up, who took a tank dismissed by others and turned it into a force capable of surprising anyone who underestimated it. The forest road ahead seemed calm, but every member of the tank crew knew calm could be deadly. The mist hung thick, muffling sounds and hiding dangers. Trees loomed like silent sentinels, and every shadow could conceal enemy scouts or traps. The Germans, confident in their convoy, had no reason to suspect that a tank they considered out of action was lying in wait. That overconfidence was the advantage Wallace and his crew relied on. Inside the Sherman, tension coiled like a spring. Corporal Wallace scanned the road, calculating distance, speed, and angles. Every movement mattered. One misstep could expose them to enemy fire before they had a chance to strike. Reynolds adjusted the gun sight repeatedly, ensuring it was ready. The moment the first target appeared, Barnes double-checked the ammunition and leaned forward, ready to react. Harris kept his hands steady on the controls, knowing that navigating through mud, ruts, and hidden obstacles could decide the difference between survival and disaster. The convoy ahead crept along at a steady pace, oblivious to the danger approaching from the shadows. Trucks carrying fuel, artillery shells, and food. Supplies rolled forward, flanked by armored vehicles. Every turn, every bend in. The road brought them closer to an encounter they would never forget. For the Sherman crew, anticipation was both a weapon and a weight. They had rehearsed the plan in their minds countless times, yet reality never matched rehearsal. The tension was electric, each second stretching as they waited for the moment to act. The crew understood the stakes. If they failed, the convoy would continue on, strengthening the enemy's position. If they succeeded, even partially, it could disrupt supplies, delay reinforcements, and leave a mark on the battlefield that would be remembered. Silence pressed against the tanks. Armor broken only by the low hum of the engine and the faint sounds of distant movement. The forest held its breath alongside them, waiting for the first act, in a confrontation that would turn the ordinary into legend. As the convoy edged further into the forest, the Sherman tank moved with deliberate caution. Wallace guided it closer to the road's edge, using the cover of trees to stay hidden while keeping the vehicle in position for a sudden strike. Every twist of the road brought the Germans unknowingly closer to an ambush, and every meter mattered. The tank, long thought useless, now became a predator lying in wait. Reynolds peered through the gun sight, calculating distances and trajectories. He whispered updates to Wallace, noting gaps in the convoy and the positions of armored cars and trucks. Barnes readied the shells, counting each round silently, while Harris adjusted speed and angle to keep the tank stable on the uneven terrain. Their coordination was precise, almost instinctive, built on months of experience and an unspoken understanding of each other's rhythm. The convoy's lead vehicle passed, unaware of the trap forming just ahead. Wallace waited for the perfect moment too soon, and they could be detected too late, and the chance would slip away. The mist blurred outlines, making identification tricky but also providing a perfect shield. One wrong decision could alert the enemy, yet hesitation could be just as costly. Each crew member felt the pressure mounting. Their plan relied not on brute force alone, but on timing, positioning, and exploiting the convoy. Vulnerability. The old Sherman, scarred and slow compared to newer tanks, depended entirely on strategy and precision. This was a moment where calculation mattered more than speed, where patience and courage would decide the outcome. As the forest road curved, bringing the convoy deeper into their zone, Wallace gave a subtle signal. The tank's movements became deliberate, almost surgical, setting the stage for the first contact. The ambush was no longer a possibility, it was inevitable, and the moment of truth was approaching faster than anyone could imagine. The first shot rang out, sharp and loud, cutting through the morning mist like a warning. Reynolds had lined up the lead truck, and with a precise squeeze of the trigger, the Sherman's cannon roared to life. The shell struck its target with a deafening impact, sending metal and supplies scattering across the road. Chaos erupted instantly within the convoy. Drivers swerved, armored vehicles braked, and men scrambled to assess the attack that had come from nowhere. The Germans were stunned. They had been moving confidently, believing the forest held no threat, and now one tank written off, ignored, and assumed harmless was turning their formation into disorder. Wallace called out commands, his voice calm but urgent, directing his crew to maximize every second of it. Surprise! Barnes loaded the next shell, hands moving quickly, while Reynolds adjusted the aim for the next target. Harris guided the Sherman into a better firing position, keeping the angle just right to avoid exposing the tank's weak points. The initial engagement was swift, precise, and deadly. The convoy tried to react, but their coordination faltered under unexpected pressure. Trucks collided, vehicles stalled, and soldiers on the ground dove for cover as shell tore through the front ranks. The Sherman, though battered and slow, exploited every advantage of the terrain and the enemy's unpreparedness. In those tense moments, the forest became a battleground where a single, determined crew could dictate the pace. The tank was more than metal. It was strategy, courage, and skill concentrated into one machine. Every action was calculated to inflict maximum disruption, and every shot reminded them Germans that even a discarded weapon could become a formidable force when wielded by the right hands. By the end of this initial engagement, the convoy was already reeling. Panic was spreading, confusion mounting, and the notion of a broken tank turning the tide of an encounter was becoming painfully real. What had begun as a quiet morning road march was now a scene of chaos, and the true battle was only just beginning. The initial shock had hit the Germans hard, but they were far from defeated. Drivers struggled to regain control, armored cars tried to form defensive positions, and soldiers scrambled to mount a counterattack. The forest, once quiet, now echoed with the sounds of metal crunching, shells exploding, and the shouts of men fighting for survival. Every twist of the road became a potential trap, and every move the convoy made played into the Sherman's hands. Inside the tank, the crew worked like a single organism. Wallace's commands were precise, guiding Reynolds to new targets and signaling Barnes for rapid reloads. Harris maneuvered carefully, keeping the Sherman mobile while avoiding exposed flanks. The pressure mounted with every passing second as the convoy began to fire back with machine guns and artillery. The tank shuddered under near misses, but the crew held their ground, knowing retreat could mean disaster. Complications quickly arose. Trees obscured lines of sight, enemy armor. Cars attempted to flank, and the mist that had once concealed the Sherman now hid approaching dangers. Yet Wallace and his crew adapted instantly. Using the terrain, the tank's worn but reliable engine, and split-second decisions, they maintained their advantage. The convoy, despite its superior numbers, was slowly being funneled into chaos by the unexpected precision and timing of the Sherman's fire. The tension escalated as the forest became a deadly chessboard. Every shot fired by the tank forced the Germans into reactive moves, each more desperate than the last. Smoke, dust, and debris filled the air, making visibility low and stress high. For a tank deemed useless, every successful maneuver and every destroyed vehicle was proof that determination, skill, and strategy could overcome odds that seemed impossible. By the end of this phase, the convoy was fragmented. Trucks were overturned, armored cars disabled, and panic had fully set in among the German soldiers. The stage was now set for the Sherman to deliver its decisive blow, a climax that would cement the story of a tank once written off as nothing more than scrap. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the Sherman tank moved with deadly precision toward them. Heart of the convoy. The crew had forced the enemy into confusion, but now it was time for the decisive strike. Wallace called out positions for each target. Reynolds lined up the next shot, and Barnes prepared shell after shell, ready for the moment that would decide the outcome. Harris adjusted the tank's angle, making sure every maneuver placed maximum pressure on the enemy. The Germans were desperate now. Drivers abandoned vehicles, soldiers scrambled for cover, and armored cars attempted to regroup, but the chaos had already taken its toll. The Sherman, once written off as nothing more than scrap, now became the weapon of legend it had always had the potential to be. Its cannon roared repeatedly, striking vehicles with accuracy and precision While the engines growl and the steel tracks grind seemed to echo a warning, this tank was not finished yet. Moments of near disaster came as German machine guns fired from concealed positions, and a few vehicles attempted to flank the tank. Each challenge was met with quick thinking and teamwork. Wallace's calm command, Reynolds' sharp aim, Barnes' rapid loading, and Harris' expert driving combined to create a force that no one had anticipated. The convoy's formation was collapsing under the onslaught, and what had begun as hesitation and surprise now turned into outright panic. In less than 10 minutes, the battlefield had changed completely. Vehicles lay twisted and broken along the road, smoke and debris filling the air, and the surviving soldiers retreated in disarray. The Sherman, battered and worn, had achieved what many thought impossible. A tank deemed useless had not only survived but dominated the engagement, turning the forest road into a scene of destruction that would be remembered by all who witnessed it. The moment was both thrilling and surreal, a combination of courage, skill, and timing that proved even a machine written off could alter the course of an encounter. For the crew inside, the roar of the cannon was now a song of victory, and for the enemy, it was a nightmare they would not soon forget. The forest fell into a tense silence after the roar of the Sherman's cannon faded. Smoke rose from overturned trucks, shattered armored cars, and scattered supplies. The German convoy was in disarray, its soldiers regrouping where they could, many shaken by the sudden and unexpected attack. What had begun as a routine march had become a chaotic scene of destruction, leaving the enemy stunned and scrambling. To understand how a single, written-off tank had caused such havoc, inside the Sherman, the crew took a brief moment to assess their situation. Wallace checked the surroundings for threats. Reynolds inspected the gun for any signs of malfunction. Barnes confirmed that enough shells remained, and Harris listened for any sounds that might indicate approaching reinforcements. Despite their exhaustion, there was a quiet satisfaction among them. They had achieved the impossible. A tank discarded by others had disrupted the enemy and emerged victorious in a battle where odds seemed stacked against them. The immediate consequences for the Germans were clear. Several vehicles were destroyed or disabled, essential supplies were lost, and morale among the convoy had plummeted. Reports would later note delays caused by this engagement, slowing reinforcements, and altering the enemy's plans in that sector. For Wallace and his crew, the engagement was a proof of strategy over brute force and courage over expectation. In the stillness after the fight, it became evident that this encounter would leave its mark on the battlefield. The Sherman, once written off, had proven that underestimating even a damaged machine or the people operating it could lead to devastating consequences. This was a moment where skill, timing, and determination reshaped the immediate reality of war, and the forest road that morning had become a stage for one of its unexpected legends. The chaos caused by the Sherman tank's attack rippled far beyond the forest road. The convoy's delay disrupted the flow of fuel, ammunition, German forces further along the front. Every hour lost meant fewer resources for soldiers already struggling against advancing Allied troops. Commanders would later have to reroute reinforcements and adjust strategies, all because a single tank, thought useless, had forced them into unplanned maneuvers. The psychological impact was equally significant. Soldiers and officers who witnessed or heard reports of the attack realized that even a battered, seemingly defeated vehicle could inflict serious damage. Confidence in previously safe routes declined, and caution replaced arrogance in movements that once seemed routine. For the Allies, the story of a crew and their old Sherman tank provided an example of ingenuity and determination that could turn adversity into advantage. This encounter also became part of larger tactical lessons. Commanders noted how underestimating the enemy or the potential of damaged equipment could create vulnerabilities. The success of Wallace's crew illustrated that strategy, timing, and courage could outweigh numbers and technological superiority, reinforcing the idea that adaptability on the battlefield was as valuable as any weapon, though the battle on that road was small in scale compared to larger operations. Its consequences were clear. The disruption of German plans, the morale shock, and the tactical insights gained had a lasting effect on local operations. It was proof those even minor engagements could influence them broader war effort, and that every soldier, every crew, and every vehicle could play a role in shaping history. By the end of the day, the battered Sherman tank had proven its worth in a way no one had expected. Wallace and his crew emerged victorious, their courage and skill turning it machine written off as useless into a decisive force on the battlefield. The convoy was broken, supplies destroyed, and the enemy forced to reconsider the safety of routes they once deemed secure. The action of this single tank and its crew became a story told among soldiers and commanders alike. It highlighted the importance of resourcefulness, teamwork, and determination in war. Even machines that seemed past their prime could change the outcome of an engagement when in capable hands. Wallace's crew would be remembered not only for their bravery, but also for showing that innovation and daring could turn the odds in favor of the underdog. The legacy of this encounter lived on in reports, after action, assessments, and the memories of those who witnessed it. It was a reminder that, in war, nothing should be underestimated, and sometimes the most unlikely. Heroes emerge from the shadows to leave a mark that endures far beyond the battlefield. The story of the Sherman tank that was written off but went on to crush a German convoy is a powerful reminder of courage, skill, and the unexpected ways history can unfold. Every decision, every action, even from those underestimated, can leave a lasting impact on the course of events. What would you have done if you were in Wallace's crew, facing impossible odds with a broken tank? Could a single act of determination really change the outcome of a battle? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation about the remarkable stories of World War II. And for those who want to uncover more extraordinary moments from the war, stay tuned for our next story, where we dive into another incredible encounter that defied expectations and reshaped the battlefield.